drowning those caught in the entrance. This is the only entrance to Petra, known as the Sick. It was formed by floodwaters over the centuries, rushing down from the mountains above, following an earth fault. This defile is from 10 to 30 feet wide, with sidewalls over 300 feet in height. The pathway winds through the Sick for nearly a mile. It widens and narrows many times. At times, the overhanging cliffs on either side shut out the skyline, making it appear that night has fallen. In some places, only a ribbon of blue sky can be seen overhead. In several places, we ride over remnants of Roman paving stones still existing, providing evidence of the Roman occupation of Petra, which took place during the 2nd and 1st centuries A.D. Through this narrow crack in the rock had passed the inhabitants of two great nations, the Edomites and the Nabateans. Also many famous personages from classical Rome, Greece, and Israel, and the Crusaders under Baldwin I in the 11th century A.D. As the sun makes its way across the sky, the towering walls of the Sick change in colors. These colors range from pearly white to softest yellow and gold to red and carmine. In fact, every color of the rainbow is represented in the sandstones of Petra. These colorful sandstones of Petra remind one of the desert mountains of northeast Arizona and southwest Utah along the Grand Canyon. Carved in the side walls of the Sick at irregular intervals are pagan religious shrines consisting of stone god blocks set into niches. These symbolize the god Sorcerer, one of the two Edomite chief deities. Traversing the Sick gives one the eerie feeling they are exploring another planet. Just ahead of us is another stone god idol set in the walls of the Sick. The Sick is the only practical way to get into the city of Petra, unless you are a mountain goat. And you can see how difficult it would be to invade Petra, having to move an army through this narrow, mile-long ravine. Defenders stationed along the top of the cliffs could wreak havoc on any invading army by shooting arrows, spears, or just rock missiles down from the top of the cliffs. This was how Petra was successfully defended on several occasions. However, it was being a place of safety, having an abundance of water, is really what caused Petra to become an important city and wealthy by taxing the trade that passed through their area. It was the growing wealth that brought the Romans to Petra. They wanted to, muscle in for a percentage of the take, so to speak. Through intrigue rather than by fighting, they made a deal with the Nabateans, who were then the masters of Petra. A partnership was formed that proved advantageous to both partners until ever-rising taxes on trade caused the caravans to bypass Petra, which in essence bankrupt the city. After riding for about 20 minutes, one reaches the narrowest and darkest part of the chasm. As they peer ahead in anticipation, they see there, standing out from the farthest wall of a transverse gorge, flooded by the morning's soft light, part of a beautiful cut cameo of immense proportions, set off and framed by the rugged cliffs on either side. And even though one is watching for this first glance, the scene bursts upon them as a surprise. A first-time visitor usually stops spellbound, struck by the magnificent contrast. Before riding on toward Petra's most famous monument, hidden for over 1,000 years in the mountains of Edom, the limpid, pink stone building known as the Treasury, carved out of the native rock of Edom. It is actually the tomb of an ancient Nabatean king and was carved during the reign of the Roman Emperor Hadrian, who visited Petra in AD 131. The columns of this monument rise over 40 feet in height. And about 130 feet above the ground level is an immense stone urn carved out of the red rose sandstone in a classic Greek style. The treasury is by far the most majestic and most elaborately carved of all the rock monuments of this ancient necropolis. The central chamber is 40 feet square, with flanking doorways leading to small rooms on both sides. These smaller rooms contain burial receptacles. Looking back from the vestibule of the treasury toward the sick, it is easy to see how a small number of defenders could hold off an army, which was the case when Alexander the Great sent an army that failed to force an entrance. This view shows how the temple was chiseled right out of the solid rock, which continues for several hundred feet above the ground. The Nabateans also carved their homes right out of the sandstone cliffs. Literally, thousands of such homes have been found in Petra. In some places, they are in rows facing streets cut into the rock. Keep in mind, these homes and monuments are over 2,000 years old and existed for over prior to that. This is known as the Street of the Facades. Many styles of architecture is found on the monuments of Petra. The plainer fronts are mostly Nabatean, while the more ornate are of the Roman period, often carved over the original Nabatean buildings. Only a few artifacts like this marble head have been found in the excavations of Petra, mainly due to the fact that the city was not destroyed by war or earthquakes, but just slowly dwindled away, giving the inhabitants time to remove their possessions. The only still standing walled building in Petra is the ruins of the Temple of the Pharaoh's Daughter, a name whose origin is unknown. It is actually a temple for the Edomite god Sorcerer, later adopted by the Nabateans. It was built by the Romans as a public works project to show tolerance for the religion of the inhabitants of Petra. Many of the ancient tombs and temples of Petra are located high up on the mountains surrounding the city. To reach them, we must climb steep gorges and often sets of stone stairs. And in doing so, we pass many natural caves that were no doubt once the homes of the early Edomites, whose descendants became, for the most part, integrated with the Nabateans. Many of the Edomites, however, migrated into Palestine during the Babylonian captivity of Judah and were still there when the Judeans were allowed to return to Palestine by Cyrus after the downfall of Babylon. These Edomites were later integrated into the new so-called Jewish state, which by the time of Christ was a multiracial nation. About 600 feet above the city is Ed-Dur. To construct this temple, the ancient masons had to strip away a mountainside to create a flat surface into which to carve. Ed-Dur's huge door is some 26 feet high and provides the only light reaching the interior, a single chamber 38 feet by 37 feet in size. The facade of this temple is about 154 feet in width and approximately 132 feet in height, and contains niches for placed statuary long since removed. The unique feature of Ed-Dur is a huge stone urn weighing many tons on top of the monument. It has been carved from a separate piece of rock, and it is interesting to speculate how this colossal weight was handled and placed into position. From the top of the urn, we gain a panorama view of Petra. But watch out, don't get too close to the edge. I don't want to lose anyone. From the city of Petra, there are many side canyons winding up the mountains surrounding the city. All have paths passing by hundreds of cave-like homes and monuments. In one of these cave homes, Esau hid out as a hunter, whose descendants were the subject of a